Louise Françoise Leblanc de la Valliere is a self-absorbed mage in a world of wands, cloaks, and royalty. Although she studies at Tristain Academy, a prestigious school for magicians, she has a big problem. Louise can't use magic properly, earning her the nickname Louise the Zero from her classmates. When the first-year students were asked to perform a summoning ritual, Louise's summoning resulted in a huge explosion. Everyone considered this another failure, but when the smoke cleared, a boy named Saito Hiraga appeared. Now Louise's familiar, Saito was treated as a slave, forced to clean her clothes and eat from the ground. But when a foreign brand was found engraved on Saito's hand from the summoning ritual, it was believed to be the mark of a powerful familiar named Gundulf. What will Louise's treatment of Saito be like next? Watch their hilarious story till the end. The story begins when a beautiful teenage girl is preparing to go to school. She is Louise, a second-year student at a mage school. Mrs. Chevreuse has just been appointed as a new teacher at Tristain Academy. She will teach earth element magic to Louise and her friends. Chevreuse slightly demonstrated her magical abilities by turning stone into brass, leaving the students in awe. She told one of her students to try the same magic. Chevreuse chose Louise to try it. Immediately Louise's classmates refused because they knew something bad would happen, but Louise was confident and wanted to prove it to everyone. In another room, Osmond, the flirtatious principal who likes to tease his secretary, Longueville, not long after he said the school was safe and peaceful, a class suddenly exploded. Yep, it was Louise's doing. The whole class was torn apart by her. Chevreuse was already unconscious due to her actions. Lucky Louise was not punished. It was because the school didn't think it was Louise's fault, but her friends still made fun of her. Moreover, with the ritual of summoning familiars to be held, Louise is still confident and will summon cool familiars. The day of the summoning ritual, Louise's classmates managed to summon unique and diverse familiars, including one of her friends, Goiche, the showy and arrogant person who hopes to summon the best familiar, but what appears is beyond his expectations. Another girl, Kirchi, who had also mocked Louise before, managed to summon a unique familiar, Salamander. All the students had their own familiars, only Louise was left. When she did the summoning ritual, there was a big explosion, followed by the appearance of a boy who made her friends mock Louise. She intended to do it again, but it was forbidden because she only had one chance. Being in a foreign place scared the boy, but Louise had to complete the ritual by making a contract with her familiar. After the contract between Louise and her familiar was established, the familiar felt a heat and a mark appeared on his hand, causing the familiar to faint. After woke up, he was in Louise's bedroom. He was still confused, especially when he saw Louise casually undressing in front of him. Because the familiar was talking too much, Louise had intended to silence the familiar's mouth with her magic, but the magic instead allowed them to understand each other's language. Louise said to the boy that he was summoned by her magic as a familiar. The familiar's name was Saito Hiraga. After Louise explained everything to Saito, he ran away instead and met Goiche, who was alone with Katie. Trying not to be seen, Saito sneaked past the two of them. Before long, Louise came and asked Goiche for help to catch Saito. Goiche used his magic to make Saito float and surrender. Back to the Saito's world. Before the familiar summoning ritual, Saito was walking in the middle of Tokyo City, Japan. He saw a portal. He touched and was sucked into it out of curiosity. Only he could see the portal. Back in Louise's room, Saito told her that he came from Earth. Louise admitted that she didn't know about it at all. And again, Louise undressed in front of the boy because she thought Saito was just a familiar. Because of that, Louise told him to do her dirty laundry and other chores. Saito was forced to accept his new destiny as a familiar. The following morning, Saito had to prepare uniforms for Louise and treat her like an employer. Then they went to breakfast. When Saito was happy that he would eat well, Louise just fed him on a dirty plate with bread that was tough like a rubber. They went out for some fresh air and meet Kirchi. As usual, Kirchi mocked Louise for letting Saito almost run away. When Saito was ordered by Louise to fetch a cup of tea, he accidentally ran into Siesta, a maid from a peasant class like Saito. The difference between them is, nobles have magic, and those who don't are peasants. When Siesta wanted to deliver food to Guiche, Saito had an idea to avenge him. Saito reported Guiche to his girlfriend, Montrenzi, that he saw Guiche having an affair with a first-year student, Katie. Coincidentally, the first-year student appeared looking for Guiche's whereabouts. When the three of them met, there was a commotion. The two girls got angry and left Guiche. Feeling humiliated, Guiche invited Saito to a duel. Louise appeared and told him to apologize. But Saito refused her order and would accept the challenge. At the principal's office, Osmond is told that it is unusual for a peasant familiar to have the mark. The principal asked the teachers to keep a secret regarding the mark in Saito's hand. The duel between Saito and Guiche started. Guiche took out a brass golem that was no match for Saito, but he didn't just give up. Although Saito was beaten to a pulp, he still wanted to fight him. Guiche gave the sword to Saito to balance things out. When Saito took the sword, the sign in his hand gave off a gleam of light, giving Saito new strength and managed to defeat all of Guiche's golems. The duel knocked Saito unconscious. When he woke up, Siesta told him that it was Louise who had taken care of him. After recovering, Saito was told to wash a lot of dirty clothes. Because all his work was done, Louise asked Saito to escort her to class. Chevreuse describes the various elements and their combinations. Kirchi again mocked Louise for not being able to master any of the elements, making Saito finally understand the reason why Louise has always been said to be bad by her friends. That way, Saito also joined in mocking Louise. As a result, he was not fed by Louise. Not wanting to starve, Saito kept looking for ways to be fed, but instead, he made Louise annoyed and told Saito to sleep outside. Siesta, who saw Saito's condition, was concerned and took him to the kitchen. Saito was treated very well because Saito had made peasants proud by being able to defeat an arrogant noble like Guiche. Siesta told him that Saito was in critical condition at that time, but Louise gave him a very expensive potion so that Saito is still alive now. When Saito wanted to return to his room, Kirchi had Salamander caught and kidnapped him, bringing him in front of Kirchi, who was wearing sexy lingerie. Apparently Kirchi had an interest in Saito, although she was willing to abandon her date with Styx. Kirchi's other lover suddenly appeared and asked for an appointment about their date's schedule. This girl seems to be a player. Before she could do anything to Saito, Kirchi was raided by Louise, who forced him to go back. Louise whipped and scolded him. Saito thought that Louise was jealous, but Saito explained everything that happened to Louise until she finally understood. The following day, Louise asked Saito to go to somewhere. Krish, who saw that, asked her friend, Tabitha, to go to follow Saito. After 3 hours' ride on horseback, it turned out that Louise took Saito to a weapon shop. Saito was offered a great sword, but the price was very expensive, 3,000 gold coins, while Louise only had 100 gold coins. As a result, the shop owner offered them an ugly sword for 100 gold coins. With no other choice, Louise took the sword. Louise had no money anymore because she had spent it on expensive potions to treat Saito. Arriving home, Saito was bought by Kirchi the Great Sword earlier, even for only 500 gold coins. It was because of Kirchi's unusual bidding technique. Saito was faced with two choices of swords, which led to a dispute between Louise and Kirchi. While they were arguing, they accidentally awakened the sword that Louise had bought. That sword can speak up. Saito finally chose the sword Louise gave him, which had the name Derflinger. On the other hand, Osmond has a messenger from the palace, Count Mott. Osmond seems obedient and cooperative with the contents of the letter. Well, Osmond couldn't refuse any order if it came from the palace. Osmond warns of thieves on the loose looking for treasure, especially their school, which the thief might target. He said that while teasing Longueville. Later that day, Saito was asked to wash silk, which he didn't know how to do. Luckily, Siesta came to help and taught him how to wash silk. Siesta was grateful that Saito had elevated peasants to status thanks to his unyielding actions. When Saito was about to return to his room, he was intercepted by Kirchi, who offered him the great sword for free, but Kirchi's words made Saito feel disappointed. Kirchi tried to stop Saito from leaving by offering him various luxury items, but Saito still refused. Again, Louise came and told him to go back, Saito getting punished for his actions. Due to his actions, Saito was no longer allowed into the classroom and had to wait outside with the other familiars. Feeling hungry, Saito went to the kitchen and was informed that Siesta has resigned because she was asked to be Mount Mott's servant. Saito asked Louise about it. She also didn't like Mount Mott because he was an arrogant noble, moreover. Noble who chose a young maid usually because they wanted to make her a mistress. After knowing that, Saito asked Guiche the whereabouts of Mount Mott. When the nobles were having dinner, Kirchi looked for Saito to feed him, but he wasn't there. Saito had arrived at the Mount Mott manor. Siesta was almost harassed by the noble when Mount Mott's bodyguard knocked on the door carrying Saito. Saito pleaded with Mount Mott to return Siesta to school, and in exchange, he would do anything for Mount Mott. Then, Mount Mott told Saito to find an heirloom book left by the Zerps family. Saito went straight home and thought that the book in question belonged to Kirchi. Louise picked him up to take him back. She asked Saito to surrender because Mount Mott had higher ranks unlike Guiche. Saito didn't give up and went to visit Kirchi's bedroom to ask for the book. Kirchi did have the book. If he wanted it, Saito had to go on a date with Kirchi, angering Saito because he thought all nobles were the same. He went with Kirchi's sword. Early in the morning, Saito went to Mount Mott Manor. Louise, who was sleeping, was woken up by Kirchi and Tabitha, who told her that Saito was acting again to free Siesta. Saito tried to sneak in, but he was caught by the guards and immediately taken into the manor to meet Mount Mott. Saito planned to free Siesta by violent means. On the other hand, the girls went after Saito. Unlike when fighting Guiche, Saito's body trembled against Mount Mott. Saito was startled by the water magic that attacked him, but luckily there was Louise who blocked the attack. Louise apologized to Mount Mott and would accept any punishment given, but before that happened, Kirchi gave her family heirloom book to Mount Mott. Instead, Mount Mott had to free Siesta. It turned out to be an adult magazine owned by Kirchi's grandfather, which she said came from the other world. Saito knew the adult magazine was from his world. Before returning home to the school dormitory, Siesta gave a kiss as a sign of gratitude. A thief who had previously been alluded to by Osmond, Fuka the sculptor, managed to steal the treasure belonging to the school. Elsewhere, Louise is training Saito to take him to the exhibition, a school event where the familiars show off their skills. Louise didn't know what to do with Saito, so Derflinger accidentally fell and made Louise come up with a brilliant idea. But Saito doubted the idea because it was just a coincidence that he could wield a sword. Louise didn't want to know, so Saito had to practice swordsmanship before the exhibition started. Siesta, who saw Saito practicing, informed that this year's exhibition would be special because Princess Henrietta would also be seeing it in person. In the principal's office, Osmond receives a report from Longueville regarding the familiar exhibition, but he doesn't hear it instead and busy trying to find a way to see his secretary's panties. Siesta took Saito to the place where the students were practicing for the show. Until there, Siesta encouraged Saito before she returned to work. Longueville made sure that the guarding of the palace's valuables was under control. The following morning, Princess Henrietta arrived at Tristane's school and was greeted warmly by everyone there. Saito continued to train as much as he could, but time was running out, so he couldn't do much. He suggested Louise to show off his laundry skills. Of course, it made Louise angry. Suddenly someone knocked on the door, which turned out to be the princess. In the past, Henrietta and Louise were friends, but now that Henrietta had become a princess, Louise treated Henrietta as she should. Apparently Henrietta also wanted to meet Saito because she was impressed by him, a familiar who dared to go up against a noble like Mount Mott. Their brief reunion ended. Before Henrietta returned to her room, she encouraged Saito, but his behavior made Louise angry. It made the princess feel jealous because they could be free to do whatever they wanted. The day of the familiar exhibition, all the students displayed the skills of their familiars well. It was Louise the Zero's turn to tell Saito to do as instructed. Arriving on stage, Louise was already being laughed at for having a familiar like Saito. Not accepting that, Saito tried to demonstrate the sword technique, but Louise first pulled him off the stage, followed by laughter from the audience. Fuka the sculptor arrived at the storage room to steal a valuable item, but she was unable to open it, so she chose to go out and make a scene by summoning a giant golem. Coincidentally, Louise and Saito, who were passing nearby, became Fuka's target. Saito was caught by the golem. Louise intended to help him, but unfortunately Louise's magic strayed into the valuable storage room. Surprisingly, the walls of the room were destroyed by Louise's magic. When Tabitha was announced as the winner of the exhibition, suddenly there was an explosion, making Tabitha go straight to the source of the sound. Fuka had managed to break into the storage room to steal the valuables inside, and had fled from there. Have you been able to guess who Fuka really is? The first time I watched this anime, I could already guess who she was. So what about you guys? Okay, let's continue. The guards lost track of Fuka, leaving only a message that she had stolen the Staff of Destruction. Louise apologized to the princess for not being able to protect the palace's precious treasures, but Henrietta understood that as it was not her duty either. The following day, Louise was annoyed to see Kirchi feeding her familiar. Study activities were temporarily suspended due to the incident on the other day, which also forced Henrietta to take responsibility. Mr. Colbert called Louise and Tabitha to immediately meet Osmond. Loungeville sketched a thief which Louise confirmed to be Fuka. Osmond asks for help in capturing Fuka, but none of the nobles are willing to help him. So, Louise, Kirchi, and Tabitha offer to help Osmond. He had no doubts about their abilities. Since Tabitha's peerage had risen tonight, Kirchi could use fire magic very well, and for Louise. Osmond is confused about her skill. He finally mentions that Louise has a familiar swordsman. Loungeville offered to come with him as a guide. They then set off for the place where Fuka was supposed to be hiding. Saito was still wondering why a noble would steal. Then Loungeville replied that there are people who are willing to give up their nobility and turn into thieves or whatever they want. Loungeville was a peasant who gave up her nobility. She didn't want to tell the reason. Kirchi forced Saito to accept the sword she had bought, so as Saito, who was also forced to accept it, which irritated Louise. They arrived at Fuka's hideout. Louise stood guard outside. Loungeville would guard the area. While the others went inside the hut to check, Tabitha managed to find the Staff of Destruction hidden by Fuka. Suddenly a golem appeared and destroyed the hut. Tabitha and Kirchi attacked the golem with her magic, but with no effect. Tabitha then summoned her familiar. Louise tried to attack the golem because she didn't want to be made fun of by her friends again, but her attack was still not strong enough to overthrow the golem. Luckily, Saito came to save her. Louise was crying because she was of no use at all. Saito asked Kirchi to take Louise away from there. While Saito was about to try to attack the golem alone, however, the sword he was using was broken because it wasn't very strong. As a result, Saito used Derflinger, which instantly lit the mark on his hand, making Sato's body lighter to attack. Louise, who saw that, tried to help Saito use the Staff of Destruction, but she didn't know how to use it. Saito immediately grabbed the item and told how to use it. It turned out to be a rocket launcher that came from Sato's world. They were amazed by Saito and confused at the same time, looking for Fuka's whereabouts. Loungeville suddenly appears and takes the rocket launcher. It turns out that Fuka is her, who had guessed right. They'd been in a trap and also told how to use the rocket launcher. When trying to fire, it doesn't work. Having a chance, Saito defeated her. Saito knew that the rocket launcher was a single-use weapon. Back at school, Osmond hands Fuka and the Staff of Destruction to the palace guards. The three of them could join the party and would receive a reward. Saito didn't get that reward because he wasn't a noble. But what made Saito even more curious was why such an object could exist in the magic world. Osmond describes an incident 30 years ago when he was helped by a man who looked like a soldier. The dying man brought two Staff of Destruction. One was buried with his body, and the other was handed over by Osmond to the palace. The night of the party, Saito was contemplating because he didn't get a clue to return to his world. Louise appeared in her beautiful dress and unexpectedly asked Saito to dance with her. Louise finally believed that Saito was from another world, and she was also grateful for saving him. That moment made Louise's face turn red, showing that she was starting to like Saito. That's the recap of The Familiar of Zero Season 1. But wait, the story doesn't end there. There is still a sequel that is no less exciting. Did Saito manage to return to his origin world? If you are curious, you can check in the description column. Thank you for watching, and have a good day.